The Sellersville Disc Golf Course is known for its water hazards, adding strokes to players' scores on almost every hole on the course. Today we'll be covering the annual Sellersville Fishbowl Disc Golf Tournament, and to see who will manage the course the best, stay tuned as Disc Golf Monthly starts now. Hello and welcome to this month's edition of Disc Golf Monthly. This month we bring you coverage from the annual Sellersville Fishbowl Disc Golf Tournament. We have a lot of familiar faces from previous year's coverage at this event, but this year Brian Schweberger will be competing in the tournament, so this should add an exciting element to this year's coverage. Now to take a look at how some of these players played, let's go to this month's previous round highlights to see how everybody played in the first round. And starting off, we have Devin Frederick putting on basket 2C, and he makes the putt. Very nice, Devin. And moving on, we have Devin driving on basket 3. Has some nice turn. It's fading out a little bit at the end, but that should putt for him there. And here's Devin again putting on basket 4, and he makes that putt. Very nice, Devin. Now we have Adam McCarter driving on basket 5 with a flick shot. Has a nice skip to it. It's rolling away a little bit, but that should putt. And now we have Devin putting on basket 5. Very nice. And here we have Brig Sightsinger putting on basket 16, and he makes the putt. And now we have Dylan Horse driving on basket 15. He's going to get a nice skip. He's going to get a little closer to the basket. Now we have Matt Stollery putting on basket 15. That was a very nice putt from a very long distance. Very risky with that OB to the left of the basket. And now we have Mike Moser driving on basket 14. And that's a very good drive. And now we have Ed Carroll putting on basket 15 from high up, and he makes the putt. We have Bill Heddle driving on basket 14. And now we have Kevin Lebowski putting basket 15, and he makes the putt. I have Aaron Fahey driving on basket 16. That's going to get stopped short. And here he is for his putt. Very risky putt with the OB in the background, but he makes it. And now we have Aaron driving on basket 18. And he makes a nice landing there right on the basket. Now we have Jay Kofer putting on basket 2A. Very nice, Jay. And here's Brian Schweberger driving on basket 19. Coming in with a nice hyzer angle. And he'll get a nice skip. He'll have to drop in for a putt. And now we have Andy DeFranzo putting on basket 19. And he makes the putt. And here's Brian Schweberger with a thumber. He clears the OB. And here's Brian's putt on basket 2A. Very nice. And I'll do it for this month's previous round highlights. Well, those were some exciting highlights. It's great to see all those long drives and amazing putts. Now, to play well on this course, some of the strategies that players will need to consider is playing conservatively. particularly when putting, because on so many holes, the basket is less than 30 feet from the water hazards. Players should be sure when going for a long putt that they at least make contact with the basket to prevent the disc from going out of bounds. Well, let's take a look at some of these players that will be competing in the men's open division. In the first place, shooting a 54, we have Mike Moser from Wilmington, Delaware. In second place, shooting a 55, is Dylan Horst from Phoenixville, PA. In third place, shooting a 56, we have Brian Schweberger from Tarboro, North Carolina. And in fourth place, shooting a 57, we have Kyle Newton from Phoenixville, PA. Well, it looks like we have an action-packed lead card with Brian and Mike, who have many PDGA victories to show for how long they've been playing the game, and up-and-coming players Dylan Horst and Kyle Newton. We're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we will be bringing you second round action from the 2016 Sellersville Fishball Disc Golf Tournament. Don't go away. And welcome back to Disc Golf Monthly. And we're starting round 2 with Mike Moser, 1 stroke in the lead. Dylan, Brian, and Kyle are all 1 stroke behind each other. We're starting off on basket 3. This is a par 3, and it's 440 feet in distance. This is one of the few holes on the course that does not have any hazards of any kind. And Mike is going to throw his drive. Is going to have some nice turn. It's fading back nicely. It may skip into that vegetation there, you see. And now Dylan has the box with his drive. Dylan is going to throw with a very huge hyzer angle, and he is going to go straight into the vegetation. Here's Brian's drive. Brian is going to throw a very flat throw. It's also going to skip into the vegetation. And lastly, we have Kyle Newton. He's also going to throw a very flat drive. It's going to turn a lot. It's not going to get a lot of distance. So Kyle's disc is out. Here is his birdie shot. He'll just lay it up, and he'll have a very short putt for par. Here is Mike with his birdie shot. He has some vegetation to contend with here. Yes. And he puts it straight in the chains for a deuce. Very nice. And here's Brian, roughly from the same location that Mike just putted from. His disc is going to fade a little too soon.
Threw it too far.
And Dylan is also playing out from this vegetation, growing up around a fallen tree. And Dylan misses to the right side. But he will get his par. And Mike picks up now he has a 2-stroke lead over Dylan. Mike having a 56, Dylan having a 58. And now we're going to move on to basket 4. This is a par 3. It is 410 feet. This is the first hole we're going to see where a water hazard is going to come into play. It's going to be to the right. Mike is going to throw a sky roller. It is going to stand up eventually, and it's going to go into some vegetation. It's on the edge of hole number 5's fairway. There's a look at the basket. And now we have Dylan, who looks like he's going to go with an anhyzer shot. And that is turning, but it's starting to fade out and come back left. And here's Brian's drive attempt on basket 4. Brian is not getting much turn at all. Here we have Kyle Newton. He is getting a lot of turn there. He has to be careful. He is near the water. You can see. And here's Brian with his second throw. He will throw a roller. And it just doesn't give him as much distance as he hoped for. Here's Kyle with his approach shot. He did not go out of bounds. Here's Dylan with his second shot. He will make it through that very narrow opening. Brian for his third shot. He will keep it low. Here's Kyle for his par attempt. And he makes it for par.
Yeah, go ahead.
And here's Dylan also putting for par. And he makes it. And Brian, who's going to take an unfortunate bogey here. This is going to tie him with Kyle Newton. That'll move him down to the bottom of the box. And he makes his bogey putt. And Mike with a drop in 4-3. And there we see Brian has moved down to the bottom of the card with that bogey. We're moving on to basket 5. This is a par 3, 240 feet. This is a hole where you have to be careful. There's a water hazard behind the basket. It's about 30 feet away. And here's Mike throwing the floating, just a nice shot out there, a putter. It's going to slide under the basket. And here's Dylan with his drive. He's going to throw a very high hyzer shot. It's going to cut back. It's going to skip, and it goes out of bounds. And here's Kyle with his drive. He's also throwing a hyzer shot. Now his disc lands safely. It does not skip much at all. Here's Brian with his drive. Brian doesn't put a lot of spin on that, it appears. It does not make it beyond the rock wall. He's going to have quite a distance to make that putt. He's going to go for it. And he just makes contact with the basket. It doesn't roll away on him. Dangerously close to going into that creek. And here's Dylan with his inbound attempt for par, and he makes it.
Yep.
And with Kyle making that birdie and Brian only able to make par, Kyle climbs above him by 1 stroke. We're moving on to basket 6. This is a par 3, 230 feet. Here's Mike Moser with his first throw in basket 6. He's going to throw a very high turnover shot. It's going to get caught up in some tree. And Kyle, who's throwing much the same, and he also gets knocked down by about the same grouping of trees. Here's Dylan. He's also throwing a turnover shot. This one makes it through. He's looking straight across at the basket from that line. Here's Brian with his first throw in basket 6. All the players have to be careful here. There is OB to the right. And Brian also gets throw. Here's Kyle with his second throw. Kyle was running at it. Luckily, he hit a tree. Could have kept him in bounds. And Mike rather just lays up. He takes a very safe shot and avoids the water hazard. Brian is going to make a birdie here. We have Dylan with his birdie attempt. And Dylan's disc spits out, but it sits down and stays safe, luckily. Now we have Brian has moved to a tie with Kyle at a 68. Mike now has a 3-stroke lead with a 64 over Dylan. We're moving on to basket 7. This is a par 3, 230 feet. This is another hole. There's not a water hazard on this hole. However, there is a walking path that's a relatively safe distance from the basket. Players should not necessarily have to worry about that OB, but there is OB on this hole. And here we have Mike. He's going to float one up there. He's going to be within decent putting range with that drive. Here's Kyle. And Kyle gets a little too much turn too soon, hits a tree. Now we have Dylan, who's throwing a sidearm shot off the tee. And he just sneaks through the first group of trees, but gets struck down halfway to the fairway. Here he is with his approach shot. And he looks like he's behind a tree, but he's relatively close to the basket. He should be able to make that putt. Here's Kyle with his second throw. And that should putt for Kyle. Here's Mike with his birdie putt, and he just gets denied. It makes contact with the chain, but spits out after bouncing off the rim. Here's Brian with his birdie attempt, and he makes it. So with that, Brian will be moving ahead of the other players. He'll be 3 strokes behind Mike Moser in second place, with Kyle and Dylan now tied for third. And we're moving on to basket 8. This is a par 3, 310 feet. There will be some OB on this hole. It is to the left of the players. They have to be careful throwing the right-hand backhand shots to avoid skip shots, which may go into the OB. Brian keeps it low and flat. That's a very safe shot. Mike is going to take a hyzer route, which is going to skip for him. He looks like he's a little close to the OB. We'll have to see how close he came. Here's Kyle with his driving attempt. Kyle looks like it's turning a little too soon, and he goes a little beyond the basket. He does appear to be safe in that location. Here's Dylan with his drive. Dylan gets his disc up a little too high, kicks off a tree, but keeps going forward. In spite of that, he got very good distance with that shot. Here's Brian with his second throw. Brian looks like he's going to run at this. He lofts one up, and it just kicks off the rim. Here's Mike Moser with his second shot, and he makes it for birdie. Here's Dylan putting for a bogey. Yes, a bogey. And Mike now has 3 birdies and a 4-stroke lead over Brian. As we move on to basket 9, this is a par 3, 195 feet. This is one of the shorter holes on the course. It's an uphill shot. And Mike was flirting with an ace run there for a moment. Here's Brian with his drive. He's throwing a thumber. He's going to keep it very low.
Oh.
He was
You're
looking
still
for
on
a
20
skip
feet.
to get him
Yeah,
closer to the
24 at the
basket,
minute.
but a tree just got in the way. Here's Kyle with his drive. Kyle will also get stopped short by a tree. Here's Dylan. He's throwing a sidearm shot. It's a very tall, high shot. Got knocked down. Here's Kyle rather, with his birdie attempt. And that will just come back at the right time for him and went in for birdie. Here's Dylan with his birdie attempt. And it just chains out, unfortunately. Here's Brian with his birdie attempt. And Brian makes the putt. And here's Mike with a very short putt for birdie, and he makes it. The only one did not manage to make a birdie in this hole was Dylan, who is now 2 strokes behind Kyle Newton. Brian continues to be 4 strokes behind Mike. We're moving on to basket 10. This is a par 3, 275 feet. This is a hole where you have to put a lot of anhyzer on your shot or throw a flick shot. It's to the right of where they're throwing.
Too many pushes. I saw something that looked like a head flying going by there.
Turn, baby.
Turn. Don't throw it hard enough. I'm scared of looking up too.
Here's Kyle with his attempt.
Oh,
He may have let that go a little too soon, but he may have just made it through that gap.
That kick might have been a Moser kick.
Here's Dylan, the only one in the group who's going with a sidearm. And here's Kyle with his second shot. And it looks like he'll putt from there. There's a very tight grouping of trees that protects the basket. Here's Dylan with his third shot. And he just misses. Dylan's playing very aggressive to try to catch up to Kyle. Here's Brian with his putt, and he makes it. That was fantastic. Here's Kyle for his putt, and he makes it 4-3. Brian definitely needed that putt to keep Mike at a 4-stroke distance. And with that bogey, Dylan is now 3 strokes behind Kyle. We're moving on to basket 11. It's a par 3, 215 feet. There is water that lies beyond the pen. Players have to make sure they don't throw their drive too hard.
Get off of that.
I am third straight.
This is an extremely narrow fairway. Brian catches some early
Skip.
trees just the ways down the fairway. Kyle gets a fantastic skip. Really propels his disc very close to the basket. Here's Dylan with his drive.
Get it! Oh, got a non-end of a disc over here.
Looks as though Dylan may have had an ace run there. Mike takes the safe route and lays up again, as he did on hole 6. Kyle runs that at 4, putt, but misses low and to the right. Here's Dylan with his second throw. And he hits an early tree. And Mike and Brian both get par, so we're at the same distance as are Kyle and Dylan as they have bogeys. We're moving on to basket 12. This is a par 3, 200 feet. This is going to be a slightly downhill shot, very tight fairway. There's going to be a creek that they're going to have to cross over on the way to the basket.
Right.
And Mike just puts it out there.
Oh, yeah, got a little scoop.
Here's Brian with his first shot. And Brian also clears that gap with a hyzer shot.
Can't see
That should have cleared the water comfortably. Here's Kyle with his driving attempt. He got an awful lot of turn on that, but he made it through the gap, and he should be close enough to the other side. Here's Dylan with his drive. Dylan will also throw a hyzer shot that does appear as though it made it over the water. And here's Kyle at the edge. And he just misses. Here's Brian with his second shot. He has a little bit of vegetation to contend with here on his way to the basket. And he makes the putt. And here is Mike with his birdie attempt. And at this point, the only change we have right now is with Kyle only able to manage to get a par. He's 2 strokes ahead of Dylan now. As we move to basket 13, this is a par 3, 310 feet. And this is another one of the few holes where there isn't any OB to speak of here. Mike's just going to float one up there. It's going to roll away a little bit on him. Here's Brian with his driving attempt. Brian will throw a relatively flat and straight shot going right at the basket. Here's Dylan with his drive. And this will go a little too far. He's going to have some vegetation to contend with if he wants to get the deuce. Here's Kyle with his drive. This is very low. Hopefully that'll skip a little bit for him, get him a little closer to the basket. Here's Kyle with this second throw. And this will just go up and over, and he'll miss, but that is relatively close. He should be able to putt that for par. Here's Dylan, who's playing out of some great amount of vegetation here. But somehow it just manages to stay in. And Mike makes the putt for 2. So Dylan will be picking up at least 1 stroke over Kyle. Here's Kyle for his par attempt. And it spits through the chains. We'll have to see how far away it went. It must have rolled awfully far. He has a decent distance to play back. He's going to run at it. Misses the basket completely, but he doesn't go too far away. Here he is for a double bogey attempt. And he makes that. So that will now put him one stroke behind Dylan as Brian putts for his birdie. So with that, Mike and Brian are going to continue to be 4 strokes apart. Dylan now has a 1-stroke lead over Kyle. As we move on to basket 14, this is a par 3, 380 feet. This is a narrow gap to start with off the tee. With a water hazard, close proximity to the basket as you make your way down the fairway. Mike's drive, hazard's out on him. It looks like he could be close to the creek. Here's Brian with his drive.
Oh, good God.
Brian kicks off one of the guardian trees, just off the off the tee. Here's Dylan with his drive.
I did make the man there. Yes.
He throws a turnover shot, gets really good distance. And here's Kyle.
I was all in my head. I was like, oh,
Kyle's
nice.
got a very low shot with skips, which should get him relatively close to the basket. Here's Brian with his second throw. He's throwing what appears to be a thumper. And it looks like he kept it low enough. And it's just to the right of the basket. Here's Mike. He's playing out of the OB here. And it doesn't look like he had much luck getting out of it. Here's Kyle with his approach. And we have Dylan with his second throw. And he lays up. He should have an easy 3 from there. Here's Mike with his 4th throw. He hits a tree. But it looks as though it's this stopped, so that should be close enough for him to at least get the double bogey. And Brian makes a very nice putt. And Mike makes the putt. Unfortunate double bogey on that. That will put him within 2 strokes of Brian. Mike only has a 2-stroke lead now. Dylan and Kyle remain the same distance from each other. We're moving on to basket 15. This is a par 3, 235 feet. There is a water hazard to the left of the players here. Here's Brian's drive. He's going to throw a low, flat shot, a lot of turn. And that's just going to slide up just to where our cameraman's positioned. Here's Dylan with his drive attempt. He's going to hit an early tree. Here's an opportunity for Kyle to try to get as close to the basket as possible. Maybe he can get it 2. And Mike throws a shot that gets a little skip at the end. Here's Dylan for his second throw. Throws a Spike Heiser shot, which is going to get him close. Here's Brian for his second throw. Brian's going to throw a very low shot. Going to take a chance of rollaway off the table. Here's Mike for another birdie, and he makes it. Here's Kyle. If Kyle can make this putt, she could not do. Could have definitely got at least one stroke ahead of Dylan. Fortunately, he can only tie him as Kyle parred and Dylan made a bogey. We're going to take a quick break. Don't go away. We'll be right back for more action here at the 2016 Sellersville Fishbowl Tournament.
Nanotechnology, building atom by atom.
Pennsylvania's Nanofabrication Manufacturing Technology Partnership is preparing Pennsylvanians for the jobs of tomorrow. As your governor, I want to encourage young people who are still in school as well as workers who want to gain new skills to consider the educational opportunities available through the partnership.
Call 866-NANO-4ME. On the web, nano4me.org.
Welcome back. We're moving on to basket 16. This is a par 3, 215 feet, and we have Mike in the box here. He's going to throw a turnover shot, which is going to get him very close to the basket. There is OB, as you can see, to the right of the players. Here's Brian with his drive. He's going to throw another very flat shot. Going to get a little bit of skip at the end, help get him closer to the basket. Kyle's going to drive. He's getting a little too much distance. He's going to go a little further beyond the basket than he probably wanted. Dylan kicks off a tree. You got to be careful with your drive here. Make sure there's some low-hanging branches. Here's Dylan's second shot. He's being very aggressive at this point. And Kyle is putting for 2. He looks like he's going to make a run at this. He has to be careful of the water behind him. He does not make any contact with the basket at all. He goes OB. Here's Brian with his second attempt. And Brian makes the putt for 2. Mike needs the answer to this. Otherwise, this could become a one-stroke race here. And Mike makes the putt. Oh, sorry, that would have made it a 2-stroke race. Mike maintains the lead here at 3 strokes with that putt. And Dylan has now taken a 1-stroke lead from Kyle. And we're moving on to basket 17. This is a par 3, 280 feet. And Mike is throwing an Anheuser shot. It comes down a little early. He may have some vegetation to contend with that tree. And Brian does much the same. Here's Dylan with his drive. Dylan gets a little closer. He's right at the edge of the fairway. Here's Brian's second shot. He's playing out from behind a tree. He makes it over the creek, but he's going a little too far beyond the basket he probably wanted to be. He's going to have to play back now. Here is Mike with his second shot. He did have some branches to contend with. He might have went a little too far, but he kicked off a tree, and that was very lucky for him. Here's Kyle with his second throw. And Kyle keeps it rather low and keeps himself relatively close to the basket. Here's Dylan with his second throw. And he misses completely. He'll have to play back as well. Here's Brian. His third throw. Somehow a tree. He ends up hitting a tree, and he does not make the putt. Here's Dylan. Dylan makes the putt to save par. And Dylan really needed that par to hold off Kyle. He still maintains that one-stroke lead. And we're moving on to basket 18. This is a par 3, 220 feet. Mike's this just floats up to the basket. Here's Dylan's attempt.
Pull out of the wall.
There's Kyle for his first shot.
Oh, nice. Yep. Wow.
And Brian has a very nice drive as well. Here's Kyle for his birdie putt attempt. And Brian for his birdie attempt. And he makes it.
Yeah, me neither.
Everybody makes a birdie shot but Kyle in this hole. We're moving on to basket 19. This is a par 3, 215 feet. This is a hole where the layout has changed slightly. They've moved the basket to the edge of the OB circle, making it very difficult to approach for a birdie shot. And Dylan just does not get enough hyzer on that. It doesn't come back in time. It stays OB. Here's Brian. Brian also throws a cut hyzer shot, but his manages to stay in bounds. Here's Kyle Newton. His disc is turning way far away. It doesn't look like it's going to make it back, and it stays out of bounds. Mike's drive also went out of bounds. He's laying up. He'll take the 3. So this means if Brian makes this birdie putt, he is going to pull within 2. And we see Kyle is also laying up here. Here's Brian for his birdie shot. If he makes this putt, he will pull this to within 2 strokes of Mike. And he makes the putt. And there we have it. Now it's a 2-stroke race for first place. Dylan is continuing to pull away from Kyle. And now we're moving on to basket 1. This is a par 3, 320 feet. And here we have Brian with his drive off hole 1. And Brian may have grip locked a little bit, held on a little too long. That went straight into the vegetation that lines the fairway. And then we have Dylan. See how he manages this hole. Dylan had some decent luck, but a little over halfway down the fairway, kicked his disc to the right. And here we have Kyle.
Left. Saddle. Left.
His disc also kicks off a tree and goes to the right. Here's Brian with his second throw. He's on the edge of the fairway. And he kicks off another tree, and it pushes him back off the fairway on the opposite side. Here's Mike with his second throw.
Yeah, Mose. Great job, brother.
And that was a beautiful shot. Here's Brian. He's trying to get out of the rough. This is his third shot. He does not do it. He hits another early tree. Here's Dylan with his second throw.
That might have been a good hit.
Dylan does not look like he disc where it went where he wanted it to go. Here's Brian. He's trying to get out of the rough. Looks like he finally did it. That disc is moving around a lot. It's very close to the OB. It's just beyond the basket. Here's Kyle with his second throw. With a very aggressive approach, he almost made the putt. Here we have Mike. He's putting for par. He'll be the only one in the group. Oh, he would have been the only one in the group that would have made par. But his disc chained out. As you see Dylan putting out. So Mike came out of that picking up a stroke over Brian. Brian can only manage the double bogey. We're moving on to basket 2. This is par 3, 310 feet. Mike's disc gets stopped very early. Here's Dylan. He's throwing a flick shot. He's going to carry really good distance. He's going to get an amazing skip. And here's Kyle. He's putting a little too much on this. This looks like it's going to go OB. It does go OB. Here's Brian. He looks like he's going to throw a thumb roller on this hole. And then we'll get some very good distance for him. Here's Mike with his second throw. He's going to take a very safe approach shot. Kyle with his inbound shot. Here's Brian with his second throw. Here's Dylan with his second throw.
Oh shit. Roll down the top.
And he hit an unfortunate tree. Now he's on his third throw. And he just misses the basket altogether. And he had to settle for a double bogey on that hole. So Dylan getting the double bogey. Kyle is now within 2 strokes of him. We're moving on to basket 2A. It's a par 3, 310 feet. And this is a hole that will favor sidearm throwers, and Brian with his thumber. Mike's throwing a backhand right-hand shot. It catches some branches from that tree just at the edge of the OB. It may have knocked him into the OB. We'll have to see. It all depends on where it landed, what sides of those bales of hay. Brian's throwing a thumber. He is very comfortably going to clear that OB, and he'll may have a putt from there. We'll have to see how close he is. Kyle is throwing another right-hand backhand shot, but oh, he kicks off a branch. He does not make it beyond the OB bales of hay, so he's going to have to play his next shot from the drop zone. Here is Dylan with his drive.
Dang! We're dueling. We're dueling.
And Dylan makes it over the OB. Here's Mike for his second throw. And he just misses. Here's Dylan for his second shot. And Dylan makes it. And here's Brian going for birdie. And he makes it. So Brian is now going to pick up a stroke on Mike. They're at a 2-stroke difference once again here. Kyle can only manage a bogey, so that puts Dylan 4 strokes above him. We're moving on to basket 2B. This is a par 3, 330 feet. Dylan now has the box. This is one of the few times during this tournament where the first person to throw on the card has not been Mike Moser. He's going to throw a very high hyzer shot. It's going to get knocked down just in front of that tree. Mike throws much the same shot. It stays near too long, and it gets knocked down by those tree branches. Here's Brian with his second shot.
Dang.
Oh, he almost made it.
Great bid.
He really wanted that one. He's 2 strokes behind Mike. He really wants to pick up that stroke before, at least 1 stroke before the last hole. Mike would like to make this so he can keep Brian further away, but he does not make any contact with the basket on that putt. Here's Dylan for his second throw. And he also completely misses the basket. And he comes back and he makes the putt for 3. So we have a 2-stroke difference still between Mike and Brian. Dylan has a 4-stroke lead over Kyle. We're moving to our last hole. This is basket 2C. It's a par 3. It's 250 feet. There is a water hazard that does factor in this hole. It's to the right. It mainly comes into play as the tree line opens up. As you get towards the basket, Brian throws a sidearm shot, which he gets a fantastic skip. It really gets him close to the basket. There's Dylan. He's also keeping it low. He doesn't get as much skip. Mike is going to throw a backhand sky roller here. And it's just not going to give him enough distance. But at this point, with that 2-stroke lead, if he gets a fair enough approach and gets his par, he should keep this from going to a tie. You see Kyle's drive. He hits an early tree. Here's his second shot. Now we have Dylan's approach. And that should be safe, and that will putt. Here's Brian putting for birdie. And he does make the birdie. And Dylan and Kyle both finish up. So Mike's going to walk away with this with a 1-stroke lead over Brian. And Dylan and Kyle are 5 strokes apart here at the finish. We're going to take a quick break. Please don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We just witnessed a second round where Mike Moser started the round with the lead and never gave it away. Mike was aggressive in putting when he had to and conservative when he had to as well. Brian did not make things easy for Mike, but found himself struggling to manage the fairway on hole 1 and could only pull to being 1 stroke behind Mike by the end of the competition. Dylan and Kyle traded 3rd place on the card often towards the end of the round, but it was Dylan who finished ahead of him by the end. Well, that's all the time we have for this month's show. Please join us next month for another edition. Thank you for watching Disc Golf Monthly, the show that takes you one step closer to the sport of disc golf.